awesome one. And there's none like him. With him we win. He's our champion. With him we can lose. We always win. He's our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. And there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. And there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing halal, halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing halal, halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing halal, halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, come on, the root camp, the root camp. Come on, the root camp, the root camp. writings. You may be seated. We want to return where we took off. I pray that your time of rest has been sweet and that you enjoyed that time. Some of you have probably had lunch, dinner, and snack time. And so we want to come back and finish the conclusion of this matter as we turn our attention to Shema chapter 19. And we are going to pick up at verse 9. Excuse me, while you're turning down, I want to just reiterate what was spoken in verses 1 through 7. 1 through 7. And it says, keep my covenant. It's reiterating what was said in verse 5 as it's broken up, and keep my covenant. To be made by me with you, the covenant which Moshe was to make with Yahshua after the revelation, the covenant between Yahuwah and the patriarchs. We know this is now where we're going to see where the rubber meets the road, and we're going to see the characteristics of the children of Yahshua. We're going to see how they are able to handle life outside of Mitzrayim, how they're able to handle his instructions, how they're able to handle his guidance, how they're able to handle life outside of slavery and their freedom, and not allowing their freedom to become a yoke of bondage unto them. As we look closely and attentively, let us not just look, but let us also listen carefully to what is taking place in these writings. He said, mine own treasure, although all of the earth is Abba Yahuwah's, yet Yahshua is his cherished treasure above all other people, and they are therefore under his special protection. Now, when we look at Devarim chapter 7 and verse 6, it reiterates that very same thing. For you are a set apart people to Yahuwah, your power. Yahuwah, your power, has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples on the face of the earth. This is important. Why is it important? Because we cannot live our lives like everybody else. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important that we understand that. Other people may be able to do, for instance, they may be able to take 5 or 6 steps. Abba Yahuwah may tell us to take 1 step and build from that 1 step that we've taken. He may tell us to branch out and go out instead of coming in. Then he may say, come in and work inward and out. So it's important that we understand his instructions for our lives, and that we dare not stray from that what he has given unto us as his people. This is how other people will know that we are his, by the way we conduct ourselves, whether it is business, whether it is concerning our way of life, whether it is concerning our mishpachah. It is very important that we understand how to conduct our lives according to his instructions. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand these things. All the earth is mine, but you alone have I chosen. Yahuwah loves the righteous of his people. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that he has called us to be a treasured possession. Now, once again, very important for us to understand that were there other people, I believe there were other people that knew about him. He's too vast, he's too marvelous, he's too great to be hidden. He's too vast and he's too great for him to be hidden and tucked away. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
But I believe, once again, that he was only calling the children of Yahshua, us, to be a chosen and private possession of his. Now, does that mean that he does not accept other people when they come in? Absolutely not. If someone comes in and says, I want to walk in truth and I want to apply this way of life to my life, he's not going to reject you. But the problem comes in is that when people begin to walk in this way of life, many people that are not Yahshua tend to believe they have the, now let me put it in this manner, they have the same rights to a degree. Now, he said to them, treat them as your own. Now, being that said, yes, we treat them as our own, but we never allow any other culture or any other nationality to come in and try to teach us. Because remember, you will come in and you want to come in because you understand, right, is through him. Are you following me?
Yes.
But you never come to a place to try to usurp authority or try to become something he's never called them to become. A kingdom of priests. That is a kingdom of prince. The term priest being founded in the scripture as a synonym for prince. We can see that in Shamu 8 and 18. A people living a Kadesh life devoted to the service of Yahuwah and an inspiration and example to the human race. That is very important for us to understand. Are y'all following me?
Yes. Yes.
We have been chosen and called out to live and to adhere and to show the services of Abba Yahuwah. We are to live according to his instructions and be an inspiration and example to who? The human race.
God.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
This is who we're supposed to be. You can't do it by being hateful, mean, antagonistic. You can't do it by having an ugly character. You can't do it like that.
God.
We have to exemplify the characteristics of Yahuwah through who? Through Yahushua Mashiach.
Yes.
Y'all follow me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand this, and to be able to be the example. A Kadesh nation, that is a nation which will not perish, but continue forever. So it's important that we understand that he has called us and we will not perish. Now understand what that's saying. We as a people will move forward, whether it is through this generation or the next generation to come behind us. We as a people will never perish. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's very important for us to understand that. These are the words, these words only, neither adding to them nor omitting any. And Moshe came to the camp of Yasharal. Set before them, Moshe left it to their free choice to accept or reject the divine commandments. Very important that once you state it, you don't debate it. It is for us to put it out there to who? Our people. Our people. Many times we're trying to win the wrong people. Many times we're basically, in my opinion, fighting a winless battle, because you're going to other nations trying to prove to them that we are the chosen people. We're not to try to prove to them. The only thing we're supposed to do is be an example of the power of Abba Yahuwah in winning our own. It's important that we understand that. And you have to understand, everybody is not street ministry material. Everybody can't get out there, because you got some people be out there brawling. But we have to go to our own people, not to the other nations, and tell the other nations that we are the people. They are supposed to see that by our example, by living by for the Abba and following in his instructions for our lives. Right. That's very important for us to understand. They're supposed to be able to look at our lives and see that. And so it makes us feel great when you talk to people and deal with people and they say, oh, so you're the real people. You the real people too. Did not know that? You just need to stop being disobedient and come on and walk in truth. This is what people are supposed to be able to recognize. Now understand what I'm about to say. Whether I have on and we are, because I do believe that you should have your seats on. I believe that wholeheartedly. But I want to make sure that when I do the seats, that I do them accordingly. Everybody do, what they do. But when I have a fashion show, it is about us being reminded, excuse me, of how we are to govern and conduct ourselves. So with that being said, it is important that we have the right material. It is important that we fix them accordingly, so that when people see us, they will be able to recognize and acknowledge we are that people. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
But listen to what I'm about to say. Whether we have headscarves on, whether we have on seats, whether we have on anything that alludes to that, our lifestyle ought to say and speak in volumes about who we serve, not our garb. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, when you are resting on the Sabbath, nobody sees what you have on. Nobody knows what you're wearing. But the Abba sees. And then when you're not out there buying and selling, people know that there is a difference. Hey, they're not out there. They are the Ibram. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because they see it and watch our life, how we conduct ourselves, how you conduct business, how you conduct conversations. Very important for us to understand. Yes. Verse 16 of 15.
Then all the people answered together and said, all that Yahuwah has spoken we will do. And Moshe brought back the words of the people to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, behold, I come to you in the thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and believe you forever. And Moshe told the words of the people to Yahuwah. Then Yahuwah said to Moshe, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and let them be ready for the third day. For on the third day Yahuwah will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. You shall set bounds for the people all around, saying, take heed to yourselves, that you go not up to the mountain or touch its base. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. Not a hand shall touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot with an arrow. Whether man or beast, it shall not live. When the shofar sounds long, then they shall come near the mount. Then Moshe went down from the mountain to the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, be ready for the third day. Do not come near your wives. Then it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there was thunderings and lightning, and a thick cloud on the mount, and the sound of the shofar was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And it is so.
And it is so. Now let us look at this. Answered together in unison as one man. They were fully aware of what was being said. They were fully aware of what the covenant entailed, and they agreed to it. Now, mind you, Moshe did not go all the way up, as it was recorded. He did not penetrate the cloud, but he went up just enough to receive that first part of the instructions. Don't come to the mountain. Don't come that close, but stand afar off. Are you hearing me? Or stand where you don't touch it. Don't touch it. You follow the instructions. And so this is what was said. Now, Moshe reported on the next Yom, that is the third of the month, although it was seemingly unnecessary for Moshe to report back to Yahuwah, who is omniscient. This statement is designed to teach a lesson of great manners, that every inquiry merits an answer. Moshe returned to the mount to bring back to Yahuwah's people the answer, so that they also could regard the power of Abba Yahuwah. When we tell people, okay, give me time, I'm going into prayer. That's not a time that, we should be doing any and everything else. That's a time that we should pull away from social media. That's a time that we should take ourselves into a time of, I won't say just seclusion, but take yourself into a time of prayer. If the Abba calls for you to fast and pray, you fast and pray. But if you take that time and you're praying, just say in the early part of the morning, you say, I'm going to dedicate my time of prayer to seeking him for this answer for you. Then nobody should see you on the internet. Are you following me? Yes. At certain points of the day, truthfully, we should not be on the internet, because we should be in a time of what? Prayer. There's 3 times that we should not be on the internet: in the morning, noon, and then in the evening. There's 3 times that we should not be on. Are you following me? Yes. Why? Because we're in a time of what? Prayer. Because we are called to pray what? 3 times a yom. And I know we preached. And so when you're telling people, okay, I'm going to give you this answer, they ought to be able to know that you're going to pray. And they say, well, how in the world are you going to be praying and doing something if every time I come on, you on? Every time I see your light is on, now they got it to where if you're friends with somebody and sometimes your phone just stays on because of the upgrades and stuff, you start thinking, I'm not online. What are you talking about? But it stays on there. I hate that thing, but it does. It's on there. And if you have Messenger, 9 times out of 10, depending on if you upgraded to it, it'll say that you're on all the time. And I know we're not always on your phone. Yes. Because we turn it off. We're not always on. So it's important for us to understand that. The words of the people, although Moshe's message was in the first instance addressed to the elders, the people did not wait to consult them by readily acclaim it on their own account. In a thick cloud, Yahuwah came down in a thick cloud on the mount, so that Moshe could not be able to look upon the divine presence. That the people with thee, Those among the Yasharites who still doubted his prophetic powers would now become confirmed believers in Moshe's mission. Now, I want to take a break there. Now, y'all remember there was a group that came out that were not what? That was not Yasharal. So it is expected that many of them, they just came along because they saw freedom. They weren't really going because they wanted to do what? Sacrifice. So you have to understand there is a time that even in this walk where people come just believing that it's a free meal ticket. And even in that, the respect that you build with them is that they have to see, once again, the demonstration of the power of Abba Yahuwah manifested in your life. Are y'all following?
Yes.
That's very important for us to understand. And so with that, this is what we must see. Excuse me. It's important. Now, once again, excuse me, the people would have privilege in sharing the experience of the prophets and themselves, hear the divine word so that they could give personal testimony to what happened on the mount. Now, it's important that we understand that everybody is not going to have visitations like that. Did y'all hear what I said?
Yes.
Contrary to popular belief, everybody's not going to have visitations like that. Everybody is not going to be asked up like that. Are you following me?
Yes.
So it's important for us to understand that this was for Moshe. If you notice, Haran wasn't up there. Y'all follow me?
Yes. Yes.
He wasn't up there. Why? Because he was not the one called to go there. But does that mean that his position and place was insignificant? Absolutely not. It just means that when he calls whoever he wants to call up and deal with, that is who he's going to deal with. The important part for us is to also believe thee. The word also is added to indicate that the Yasharites will not only believe in Moshe, but likewise in the prophets who will come after him. So you have to understand, whenever Abba Yahuwah builds a platform and he builds, you have to understand, in order to get the gist of what's being said, you got to dig in deep. Are you hearing me? Because there is a time that he brought forth what? The prophets. He brought forth judges and he brought forth prophets. This is why when you read even into Metit Yahu 5, 17 and 18, when he gives the decree, he says, look, I have not come to do away with what? The law or the instructions of Abba Yahuwah or the prophets. So you must understand the prophetic utterance has not lost its authority or power. Neither did Abba Yahuwah pull the plug on the prophetic ministry. But unless he's speaking or wanting to reiterate something, then there is nothing to be said but what has already been spoken.
That's right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And because we have been so inundated with Christianity, when we talk about the prophetic, only thing people can see is that what has been shown by way of Christianity. So when you start reading the writings and you say, you know, I'm a prophet, the first thing people look at you is like, well, what are you telling me? I'm telling you what is written in this. Are you following me?
Yes.
So we must understand these things. Why is this crucial to us? It is crucial because you have to understand. Did he not rebuke them and say, those that seek a sign are what? Unbelievers and evil? Because they're seeking a sign. We already have a sign. It's already been given unto us. Now we must hold on to it and follow it in belief. And that sign is Yahushua Mashiach. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. And Moshe told, on the next Yom, the 4th of the month, Moshe now had told. This clause is the continuation of verse 8 and chronologically precedes Yahuwah's statement, lo, I come unto thee. So once again, he's showing things that he's speaking to the children of Yasharal. The words of the people, that they desired to hear the communication directed or direct from Yahuwah and not through Moshe. Now you have to understand, they felt like they were ready. The reason why they were not ready to listen, and I've heard people say, well, nobody wants to hear his voice. No, you don't if you are laden with sin and disobedience. No. But if you know you are doing and living a chaste life and you are living a Kadesh life before the Abba, you know you reverence him. And yes, you will fall down upon your knees and you will fall in reverence to him because you understand it's his voice is like none other. Right. But you will not run and hide because why would you hide? Hiding shows what? There is some sin hidden in there. That's why Adam and Hawa went and hid. Why? Because there was what? They were laden with sin. So those are the characteristics of the sin nature to run and hide when Abba Yahuwah is speaking. And it is so. But we don't want to hide. If anything, we want to fall out there. Anything in me, Abba Yahuwah, bring it out. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because we want to be right before Him. Sanctify them. Instruct them to prepare themselves to wash their garments and bathe, to separate them from all forms of uncleanness. Now, we're going to get down to a portion, and I want us to understand when he told them not to deal with their wives, that is not being unclean. But you have to understand that there is a washing process, and we're going to get to that. I don't want us to take verses and try to do them like this. You follow what I'm saying? Because then what happens is, this is where a lot of times people get certain things misconstrued and believe that being intimate, now you have to make sure you're married, that this is nasty, gross, and that it's not of Abba Yahuwah, and that it's unclean. Now hear me.
Yes.
It's not, but it's the process afterwards when you have to wash, and believe it or not, washing is considered what? Work. It's work. Now, be ready, verse 11. By abstention or abstention from or abstination from a marital intercourse, by keeping vigil the night before, physically as well as spiritually. And the reason being, once again, is because it is noted, according to some theologians, that this happened on the day of preparation. So if it happened on the day of preparation, on the Sabbath, you cannot wash. This is why, believe it or not, you're not supposed to be intimate on the Sabbath. You're supposed to abstain. And the reason being is because afterwards you're supposed to bathe or wash up, which is constituted or looked at as being what? Work. Are you following?
Yes.
So it's important for us to understand these things. All right. Against the third Yom. On the third Yom of preparation, that is the sixth day or the sixth Yom of the month, the traditional date of the revelation. So if it's on the sixth Yom, we know the next day is the what? It's the Sabbath. It's the Shabbat. So that means you don't do these things. And so once again, it is how we are to govern our lives. So once again, I want to reiterate that being intimate is not unclean and so forth. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
But it is that you're having to wash your clothes and or just bathe. And it is so. All right. In the sight of all the people, the word all implies that not one of them was blind, since they who had been so afflicted were healed. The Yashraelites will behold the beauty of Abba Yahuwah in the fire. Set bounds. Set signs for them around the mount to serve as boundaries beyond which they may not pass. Saying, the boundary as it were says, take heed the border of it. And Moshe was to add the further warning, whosoever toucheth. What happens if they would have touched it? They'd be put to death. They would die. They would either get shot with the arrow or Baba Yahuwah was going to take them out. So someone said, well, how can we relate that today? There are some things that I am a stickler for. And I believe that there are some things that Abba Yahuwah will give. The writings tell us that he reveals those secret things to them. He what? Ahabs. And I believe there are certain things that people that are not ready to touch should not touch. Because guess what happened? You can cause damage to your life, or you can cause damage to somebody else's life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Reason being is because everybody does not know how to handle the instructions of Abba Yahuwah. Remember when Yithro told him, he said, now, these are going to be your judges. These are going to be the people. Some will be over 1,000, some will be over 100, some will be over 10. In other words, whoever he gives unto you, if you are a leader, if you are a moray or mora, if he gives you 5 or 10, then deal with those and teach them according to the instructions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But many times people try to go beyond that because they're trying to do something that they were not called to do. And so when you go and you start trying to touch things that he has not called you into touching, and I know this is not popular because now you have so much information out there that now when you try to tell people, hey, screen that first. Don't just take that and digest it. Don't just take that and read it and take it for face value. Screen it. Make sure that it is of the Abba. Make sure that this is right. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
We've been following a system for so long that even now we are starting to see, hey, that's Jewish. And we are not what?
Jewish.
Say it again like you mean it.
Jewish.
We're not Jewish. We're Ibram. And so it's important that we go through, as I said earlier, you got to get the bones out. You only eat the meat, not the bones. And there's some meat that is so fine, like buffalo fish, that is so fine, and the bones are right in there. And depending on how it is cut, it has so many bones in it. You thinking more, I'm gonna bite this fish. Now it is a very tasty fish, but you go thinking you're gonna bite into it because they cut it like ribs. You know how ribs are? They cut it like ribs, and it's very popular in California. And you can even get it in Atlanta. I don't know if you can get it really here in South Carolina, but it's made like a rib. And you thinking, and especially if it's fried up golden brown and pretty, you think, oh, I'm gonna bite into this and get a mouthful of fish. You don't get a mouthful of fish and bones. That's the one you have to break apart and you have to pull it. It takes work, but you have to pull it apart and say, oh, this is meat. Okay, that's bone. By the time you finish, you have a little stack of bones just like that from that one little rib of fish. It's the same way we have to do. You have to really, especially when you're getting literature and information from other sources, and this becomes a part of your resource. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. All right. You really want to be careful. All right. The boundary, as it were, says, take heed, once again, the border of it. And Moshe was to add the further warning, whosoever toucheth. No hand shall touch him. The person who disobeys and passes beyond the boundaries for this would entail the touching of the mount by the one who sees the trespasser. But from a distance he was to be stoned to death or shot through with arrows, So you have to understand there was people all over the place prepared for disobedient people. Now you have to understand this is how Yahuwah was guarding and regarding what was and what still is very important to him. And this was to safeguard the people. He didn't bring them out for them to die. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
He didn't bring us out to die. He brought us out so that we could what? Live. And so there are some things that we ought not to touch. Some things I just believe we are not to touch. And so it's important that we understand those things, that we understand and be content with that. Shot through, the meaning is thrown from a height to the ground, beast or man, but not a bird because its movement could not be checked. The ram's horn sounded long. A long blast would be the signal of the departure of the divine presence and the end of the divine communication. They shall come up. Render, they may come up. There was no command that they should. Not all the people, but only Haran and his sons and the 70 elders. So it was only those that were assigned or sanctified to come up. Now, understand this. The instructions were for everybody to get, but it was only for those that he had sanctified and sanctioned to come up. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Nowadays, everybody is trying to come up and touch things that they've not been given permission to do so. If he has not permitted me to do it, I'm not doing it. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That's important for us to understand. Why? Because if you do what he's not permitted you to do, you're going to find yourself in trouble and you're going to find yourself misleading of many of people. Now you have to understand we have such a variety and we have such a vast avenue of getting material and being able to get things. And people sometimes get it just for the sake of getting it because they want to do what? They want to know more. I'm not against higher learning and learning more, but I am truly a believer. If you are in kindergarten, then learn that first, and learn how to master that, and then you, as you grow, you go, and then He will release the rest. But now, because we have so many avenues, and people just feel like I can just grab this because it's available without even checking and seeing whether or not it's permissible. And so now you got people that are self-made, and they are what? A law unto themselves. Because now when you tell people, hey, you do need somebody to teach you and help you with that. No, ain't nobody's have to teach us. Well, even we understand that Rabbi Shaul was a Moreh. We understand that Yahush was a Moreh. He went and taught. Why? Because it was needed. And it's still needed. You got people trying to run and jump over hurdles and don't know how to jump over no hurdle. A hurdle will throw you down so fast. People thinking, well, when I get to it, I jump. No, you have to understand, you got to start running and jumping over that thing before you get close to it, or your feet will get so tangled up in it, and you'll be so tangled up in that thing till it's not funny. There is a method and there is a way to jump hurdles. You just don't, it may look easy, but trust me, it is not. There's a method, and you have to have the right speed. And when you go, you got to know how to count them spaces, and then you got to know how to take that leg and put it over. If not, you think you're just going to jump, you'll get there and you'll be all tangled up in it because you will stop and throw your own self into it thinking you're going to miss it. So it's important that we understand that the high jump as well, and all the rest of those. The I think it's called the pole vault. Yeah, I used to do that. And it's a method to that. You can't just get up there and, that stick has to be in the right place. If it's not, and you don't get the right momentum, you ain't going over that bar. You're going into that bar. You're not going over. You're going straight into it. Think them they have a mat or that pillow to catch you, but you're going to go straight into it. And so it is important that we understand, yes, you get your neck caught all up in it, and people have gotten their arms caught all up in it, and it just is a mess. The pole doesn't hurt, but the embarrassment does, because you're supposed to be able to get over that thing. But that's important for us to understand. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very important to understand the instructions that was given by Abba Yahuwah to the people at that time. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. All right. We read to 15, right? 16. All right. Now, from the mount unto the people, he spent no time on his personal affairs, but went straight from the mount to the people. The inference is that the previous communication was also made to Moshe on the mount. Again, the third Yom, by the end of the 3 Yamems, that is the 4th Yom, according to one opinion in the Talmud. Once again, always listen to where those information comes from, opinions and interjections are coming from, or by the 3rd Yom, in the opinion of those who hold that the revelation occurred on the 6th Yom, which I fully believe. When it was morning, literally when it was morning or being morning, that is early in the morning, Yahuwah came down early, even before the Yasharites were expecting him. Although usually a teacher does not wait for the arrival of his pupils. The voice of the horn exceeding loud, far louder than the sound of any trumpet they had ever heard. According to some theologians, it said that the sound was so loud, this is what scared the people, because it was not just a human blowing this, but they said they believed that the Malak, that Yahuwah himself had positioned and blew the horn, blew the ram's horn, that it was so that it pierced to their very souls. And this is why when they got up, many of them, because it could be heard for miles around, but it was only for the children of Yasharal to stir them, to get them up, and to get them or get their attention. And this is how he was to do it. Many times it seems like when we believe, okay, do I have your undivided attention? And people say, yeah, you got my undivided attention. Then you ask them, can you sure I got your undivided attention? Yeah, you have my undivided attention. And then when it comes time to interject a certain thing, you start thinking, well, if I have your undivided attention, when this alarm goes off, it should not alarm you, but you ought to be ready to jump to what? To action. Because you're what? You're expecting it. Yahuwah doesn't work on our time. We have to work on his time.
Yes.
And it is so.
It is so.
All right. Let's read 17. Let's read 8 verse, starting at verse 17.
And Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet with, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was in smoke, all of it, because Yahuwah descended upon it in fire. And his smoke was the smoke of a furnace, and all the mountain trembled exceedingly. And when a voice of the shofar sounded long and became very strong, Moshe spoke, and power answered him by voice. And Yahuwah came down upon Mount Sinai, on the top of the mountain. And Yahuwah called Moshe to the top of the mountain. And Moshe went up. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, go down and warn the people, lest they break through unto Yahuwah to see, and many of them fall. And let the priests who come near Yahuwah set themselves apart too, lest Yahuwah break out against them. And Moshe said to Yahuwah, the people are not able to come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, make a border around the mountain and set it apart.
And it is so. Now he's talking to him, and curiosity always tries to get people. He in the will or desire of Abba Yahuwah that we die. Brought forth out of their tents to meet Abba Yahuwah. The word Lycoreth is generally used of two people approaching one another. The divine presence went forth to meet Yahshua as a bridegroom goeth forth to meet his bride. Moshe urged the people to acclaim as their power him who came down upon Sinai, the nether part of the mount, outside the boundary Moshe had set for them. After the mount, but tradition relates that Yahuwah elevated the mountain so that the Yasharites were under it and said, if you accept the Torah, well and great. If not, here will be your grave. And so it is alluded to once again. This is tradition, and so because it's tradition, it is something that they have used. Now, I would say this: I don't believe that Yahuwah had to threaten them, but I do believe that it was made known that if you do not accept it, then you have accepted your death. You've accepted your fate. We'll use the word fate, but you've accepted your end, and it's not going to be great. And so it is important we understand that. And I don't believe he elevated it, because if he elevated it, then they wouldn't have been able to touch it. Okay. And this is why he told Moshe, get down there and warn them. Because if that's the case, how would he have set it back down? He'd have crushed everybody. Are you following me?
Yes.
So once again, but that's just a tradition. And I always try to allude to certain things to show us what's being spoken and what is truly being believed. And it is so. The smoke of a furnace, where lime is burnt and which emits an extraordinary amount of smoke. The whole mount quake, a natural happening since mountains are immovable, wax louder and louder. When a human being blows a trumpet, the longer he blows, the more exhausted he becomes, and the weaker the sound grows. Not so with the sound of the shofar on Sinai. It waxed louder and louder. Yahuwah so ordained it that the people should not become terror-stricken, but get acclimated to the sound, and their ears grow more receptive of it. In other words, he was positioning them to hear his what? Voice. To hear his voice, that they would understand the voice and be ready to hear. This is why it is important that we do blow the shofar during the Sabbath and then after the Sabbath. Getting up when the sun comes up and blowing it. Why? Because it shows that we have done, and now this portion has come to a close. It opens and it closes. Are you following? Yes. Now, once again, what made this very exceptional and made this very unique is that it got louder and louder. Now, you can understand, we listen to the shofar, we listen to it on the um, keyboard, and we would turn it up, and the louder it got, boy, it sent chills down your spine, because the louder it got, the more it began to pierce your heart and your ear, because you don't think you could see yourself being there at that mount and listening to it. And as you're going and you're getting in position and it gets louder and louder, and you say, man, this is very loud. But guess what? We have been called to this, so we have to listen, because he's going to say something to us. It was to get them acclimated to that sound, so that they would, every time they heard it, they would know that the Abba was what? Getting ready to say something. He was getting ready to speak unto our people. So it's important that we see those things. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Moshe spoke, and Yahuwah answered him by a voice. Only the first two of the Ten Commandments, according to them, were spoken by Yahuwah direct to the people. The remaining eight being communicated to them by Moshe, that his voice should be audible to the large multitude. Yahuwah endowed him with the requisite physical strength. The clause means that Yahuwah answered, met his needs with respect to his voice. So once again, let's look at this. Moshe at this point is not refusing to be a speaker. Once again, this is how we can tie that in to say it had nothing to do with his speech. It had everything to do with him feeling inadequate to deal with Pharaoh because of his what? Status. Because if he was going to be stuttering, you're going to be stuttering speaking loud? But he had no quorum. Once again, understanding it was according to him dealing with a person of notoriety. And he felt like that he was inadequate and that he could not talk with people that were of that echelon. And so Yahuwah had to show him. But now here it is. He's fully vested and he is ready to speak. And his voice is elevated. And he does speak to the children. And it is cut off. So that is right. He did cut it off. Why? Because the people began to run in fear because of the voice of the Abba. They couldn't handle it. And once again, and I believe this is what the shofar was to do, was to help them be prepared for the voice, for his voice, or for what he was getting ready to say. And so he says it. And so now Moshe is to take it up. When Moshe spoke to Yahuwah, his voice was not audible to anyone else. But when Yahuwah answered him, he spoke to him in a loud voice so that his words should be heard above the sound of the shofar. This passage does not describe the revelation of the Torah, but that preceded it on the third Yom. When Moshe ascended the lower slope of the mount to receive instructions from Yahuwah detailed in verse 21. Yahuwah came down not to be interpreted literally. Yahuwah lowered the Shemayim to the top of the mountain so that the throne of his beauty rested upon it. Yahuwah called Moshe to the mount. He thereby demonstrated to Yasharal the high degree of merit attained by Moshe. Now you have to understand, once again, this is important that we understand the mercy of Abba Yahuwah. Do you not know he already knew Moshe was going to mess up? But he still welcomed him in his presence and allowed him to embrace and allowed him to experience that type of visitation. Once again, everybody is not fortunate. Everybody is not prepared for that. You know how I know everybody is not prepared for that? Because you have people today thinking they've spoken to him, and what did they do? Put it in a book. They've marketed it. They've taken it and they've said, you know, I've spoken to him. Now they want everybody to come to them because they feel like, well, he spoke to me. So now I can tell you, he may speak to you one time and never speak to you ever again. But this is what people have done. And so, and I believe, and I've said it years in the past, and I'll continue to say it, I'm not a problematic teacher or preacher. But I do believe that the reason why we don't see certain things is because we are not really looking for those things. Not look at some of our people. I'm not saying everybody. I wouldn't dare say that. But some of our people are not looking for that. They're looking for something else. Okay, I'll do this. Just don't talk to me about it. You know, I will do this. Just do not talk to me about it. Let me do this and we're great. But don't talk to me. Don't interact with me about this. Because we're busy doing so much other stuff. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And now you have to understand he speaks to us By way of who? By Yahushua Mashiach, through the Ruach HaKodesh. So he does speak to us. He does. But we need to be listening to what he desires to say to us. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Excuse me. All right. Now, Yahuwah called Moshe and thereby demonstrated to Yahshua the high degree of merit attained by Moshe. Charged the people, warned them not to ascend the mountain, lest they break through the bounds and come nearer the mount in eagerness to catch a glimpse of the beauty of Yahuwah. Once again, being foolish, scared, but hey, man, you know they didn't have no cameras back then, but I'm sure if they did, everybody would be doing what? Taking pictures and trying to post it. Because this would be not so much a great phenomenon, but it would be something that people want to get paid for. You know, hey, I saw this, pay me. But he's telling them don't, because their motive was not right. If you can't listen to me, how you gonna look at me? The priest, that is the firstborn, that come near to offer sacrifices to Yahuwah, they must not think they have permission to ascend the mount. Sanctify themselves, they must remain at their posts. Although they are sanctified to Yahuwah, they should hallow themselves still more in their thoughts for their duties. Very important point to make. The thought life is a powerful thing. And though many times we believe we can hide and we can cover things, it's important that we understand that before the thought enters your mind, Abba Yahuwah has already seen it. And most of the time, you can tell what a person is thinking by the expressions of their face. Mm-hmm. And so he's telling them, prepare your thoughts, because even your thoughts can be deadly to you. One of the things I'm coming to understand is that when you are desiring to move forward, you have to cast down every evil imagination. Everything that tries to exalt itself against the knowledge of the Abba, you have to cast it down. Why? Because if you continue to follow in stinking thinking, you can never progress. I heard something said the other just on last Layla, and it really bothered me. And I try to not let things bother me and get up under my skin, but it depends on where it's coming from, why it bothers, why it can bother you. And this is important that we guard ourselves and guard our hearts, because sometimes people can be close to you and say things that can hurt you literally to your heart, or say things that make you question, your validity and question your value. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's very important. When you hear a person say, I don't talk about doing what I'm going to do, I've done it. And okay, we've had this conversation where I would share, I'm going to do this and do that. No, I have not gotten it up yet, but I am. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Rock solid, solid as a rock. And so it's important that we understand that things can be said that will cause your thought life. If it doesn't exalt it, it'll cause it to do this. And every time you think you're getting ready to move forward and you start working on something, you start thinking, well, what if they don't like it? What if it's not, what if they don't, what if, they say, well, that's not my taste. I don't like that. Well, I would if it was long. I would if it was short. And you get all these crazy thoughts coming through your head, because now you become the marketer. But at the same time, you got to market your stuff from a position of what? Positiveness. Because if you think, well, ain't nobody going to buy it, guess what? You're not going to market it like people going to buy it. You're going to market it like people don't want it. And we can't do that. And so it becomes a battle between the thoughts. It becomes a battle between your ears. Because now what you have just heard has just come against or come to infiltrate or to destroy the thoughts that you're saying, no, I know this is my position and I know this is what I have to do and I'm going to do it. Are you following? So you have to be careful of these things. And so he was telling them, be careful of your thoughts, because your position. Now, we can come up with a many of things, but at that time, you'd probably be scared as crap thinking, well, if I go up there, even when it's time for me to do my duties, am I going to die? Or is my life going to be taken from me? So things that they could have been thinking about, but he said, no, prepare them and tell them, watch their thoughts. So it's important for us to understand that. Are you hearing
Yes.
me? Lest you who will break forth, bringing um, death upon them and make a breach in their ranks. The people cannot come up. Moshe reminded Yahuwah that the people did not need a second warning against ascending the mount, as they were already under a strict command not to do so for the past 3 years. Moshe was wavering whether to warn the people a second time. Now, once again, this is another thing that is important for us as the children of Yasharal to be careful of. Because when you're dealing with people and you say, but I've already told them that, do I have to tell them that again? If he says tell them again, tell them again.
Yeah.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
We don't decide when to stop. Yahuwah does. And if he says warn them again, it's because remember, he has 1,000 sight. You know 20/20 with him. He has sight all over. He sees everything. He's omniscient, omnipotent, and omniscient. And so he's able to see, and he's in all places, and he's not in all things, but he's in all places. Are you following me?
Yes.
So it's important that we understand if he said do it, it is because he sees something that you and I don't see. And this is important. Why? Because at times when you're dealing with people, sometimes you're like, I don't want to waste this on people. But if he says do it, do it.
Yeah.
Do it because it's necessary. Yahuwah therefore cut short his hesitation by commanding him to go down from the mount and warned them again. Moshe was in doubt whether the reception of the warning, this time with the addition of lest they break through unto Yahuwah to gaze, was intended to convey a further restriction that the people may not approach to gaze even without overstepping the bound. Therefore, it made it clear in verse 24 that the prohibition related only to breaking through to come up unto Yahuwah, not gazing from afar. So he's telling them, be careful and don't break the command and don't be disobedient. So when something is told to be reiterated, it is necessary because we save lives by doing that. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Get thee down and give the people another warning, since the great event was about to happen. Thou shalt come up a little way up the mount, but not too far from the people, thou and Haran with thee. Against the traditional division of the words, connects and the priest, so literally, with this clause and holds that the prince or the priest were also commanded to go up the mount with Moshe. But a separating space was to divide between Moshe and Haran, and between Haran and the priest. The people, however, were not to go beyond the set limit. In the view of the command, thou shalt come up, thou and Haran, with thee, relates to what they were to do after the communication of the Decalogue and other laws. Now, once again, very important to understand. Let's look at verse 24 real quick in chapter 19, because I want to show what is being stated. Are y'all following?
Yes.
All right. Then Yahuwah said to him, away, get down, and then come up, you and Haran with you. But do not let, listen what he's saying, but do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to Yahuwah, lest he break out against them. Are y'all following me? Yes. That's in the Abrahamic covenant writings. I'm going to read it from the Nazarene version. And Yahuwah said to him, come, go down, and then come up, you and Haran with you. Does he add anybody else in there? We've read it from 2 versions where it was not for the priest to come up. Why am I reiterating this? Because according to many of the commentaries from the Mishnah, from the Maimonides, from the rabbis and some sages, where you hear about the 72 elders, excuse me, or the 72 that were supposed to be the Pharisees that later on manifested in the time of Yahushua, that this is why they took on the position, is because they were supposed to be called up with Moshe and Haran as well. And this is why they took that position. I was reading something called the seat of Moshe. And in this writing, it talked about those that had tried to take on or assume the responsibility. Are you following me? In
Yes.
other words, they put these elders in the position or just a little below Moshe to say, now we have assumed this a position because at that time we were also called up. But according to the writings, they were not called up, right?
Yes.
Everybody sees that, right?
Yes.
When you see that, then you come to understand there are a lot of things that were added to give people position and clout. Nowhere did he say for them and the priests. Are you following me?
Yes.
Yes.
They were not to come up. They were to remain where they were. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very important. Now, verse 25, and told them, Moshe repeated the warning, and when he had finished doing this, forthwith Yahuwah spoke the 10 words. So it's important. Don't add, don't take away, don't put people in position that they're not supposed to hold. And this is why we have a whole lot of stuff now that is in the atmosphere because of people putting people in positions that they are not supposed to be in. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
They took that upon themselves and hey, they were there, understand, they were there for the portion that they needed to be. And then when it came to this portion, they were not called up. They were still in position and were to maintain their post, but they were not to be called up. So if they were not to be called up, it is not for us to assume that they were put up there if they were not mentioned. Are you hearing me? Yahuwah doesn't make mistakes, and he doesn't want us going assuming and saying, well, what he really meant, because now you've just added. No, he said it, he means it, and if it is there, then that's where we have to take it at face value. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. If not, this is why we got so many people out here acting all Looney Tune. Because too much stuff has been added. All right, chapter 20, the Decalogue. We're only reading to verse 23. Chapter 20, all the way to verse 23. I think that's all. Yeah. No, it's 20, actually 20 something verse, but we're only going to read to verse 23. And it is so. Let us read 8 verses, please. And it is so.
Shemot chapter 20, beginning verse 1. And Yahuwah spoke all these words. I am Yahuwah your Savior, who brought you out of Mitzrayim, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in Shemayim above, or on the earth beneath, or the Maim below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, Yahuwah your power, am a jealous power, punishing the children for the sin of the Abbas to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing a hab to 1,000 generations of those who will have me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of Yahuwah your Savior, for Yahuwah will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping Kodesh. And it is so.
And it is so. You read the 8, right? All right. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe all these words, saying, and he gives unto him um, the commandments, the 10 commandments. This has raised a number of problems in connection with the 10 commandments. I'm just going to read this once again. I always try to put different things out there for us to see because many times these are things we've heard already. And these are things that have been held in discrepancy. Some of it is rightfully so, and then some of it is not. But I want us to look at this. All right, it says the theologian raises a number of problems in connection with the 10 commandments. The chief of which are how can I am, etc., be considered one of the commandments, seeing that it is neither enjoins a positive duty or expresses a prohibition. In the first 2 commandments, Yahuwah speaks in the first person. Elsewhere, he is referred to in the 3rd person. He also calls attention to the variations in the versions of Devarim chapter 5. While the first 2 are identical in wording in both versions, and other varies in form and detail. He rejects the explanation that both versions were spoken by Yahuwah simultaneously as contrary to reason. His conclusion is that in Exodus or Shema, we have the exact wording as it was spoken by Yahuwah, Whereas in Devarim, Moshe addresses a reported version to the people with some slight variations which have no significance, but others which have the purpose of removing possible misinterpretations. So this is what is being alluded to this now. And it says, and Yahuwah power spoke, denotes Yahuwah and his aspect of judge. And the use of the designation in connection with the Ten Commandments implies that Yahuwah exacts punishment of those who are guilty of any infringement of them. All these words, Yahuwah first spoke the Ten Commandments in a single utterance and then repeated them one by one, saying literally to say, that is, the people responded yea or nay to each clause as the contents required. It's almost like how you do a call and response. That's what this is what they're alluding to. I am Yahuwah. The declaration in this verse is the basis of all the commandments and the source of their authority. This is a positive commandment that Yasharal should believe in the existence of Yahuwah, which is the foundation of the other commandments. I alone am the prime cause of all existence, which is very important because many times this is why we have to be careful of syncretism. This is why we have to be careful of adopting certain things into our lives. Understanding sometimes we adopt habits and different things, even phrases that we ought not to, because we're thinking, oh, this is what we do as a people. These things have connections and they have powers connected to them. So it's important, even in our wording, that we be careful. Thy power, you have a direct approach to me and need no mediator to intercede with me on your behalf. Who brought thee out? Yahuwah's miraculous deliverance of Yasharal from Mitzrayim is a sufficient warrant for their submission to him. The deliverance from Mitzrayim, which the Yasharites had experienced, constituted them witnessing to the existence. You know what I'm capable of doing. You know what I've done, and so do we. Are your phone?
Yes.
So we should never let that escape us. House of bondage, literally house of slaves, not a house belonging to slaves, but he delivered them from the house where they were enslaved. So they had no ownership of Mitzrayim. Are your phone?
Yes.
Thou shalt have no other power, for I alone have brought you out of Mitzrayim. Although the previous commandment had declared, I am Yahuwah thy power. The purpose of this commandment is to make it clear that it is also forbidden for the Yasharites to retain in his possession an idol made by someone else. The prohibition is extended to believe, in the divinity of angels or any other heavenly host, for the acceptance of the sovereignty of the king, any of his ministers, the worshiping of angels, the worshiping of deities. This is why we are never to bring certain things into our homes, especially idols. You know, they say, oh, those, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a figurine. But what is the root to that figurine? Why was it made? What is this? And like I say, it's very important that we find these things come from and their root and their purpose. Because many times they're talismans, charms, and medallions and all those things. And they do have a connection, and it is to idol worship. So we have to be careful of those things. Are you following me?
Yes.
Other powers, not that other powers exist for to declare that this would be blasphemous, but the phrase means power of others, that is, objects which others have defied. In other words, Yahuwah is not saying that there is anyone equal to him, meaning powers or things that have been carved that are equal of with him. But he is saying, don't grab something and make it equal to me, because it's no way possible. Are y'all following me? You know how people say, well, this is just, you have many people that dive into ancestral worship. And so they will have the figurines of the ancestors in their homes. Now, someone will say, well, we can't have figurines. I didn't say that, but I did say this. You better be extra careful of what you bring into your house, because most of the time when you see the figurines of our people, those are forms of idols, and our ancestors did worship them. And this is why you have to be careful. They said, but I just want it because to me, it's just a nice figurine to have. They are nice, But at the same time, you have to understand why it was created and the purpose of it. And once you can get to that, then you can either accept it or reject it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Before me, that is so long as I exist. The injunction against idolatry was not only ordained upon those who came out of Mitzrayim, but also upon all future generations. For this phrase, in the sense of so long as I exist, is in Bereshit 11, excuse me, and 28, Bamidbar 3 and 4. It also teaches that Yahuwah is omnipresent. So whatever idolatry or whatever idolatry is practiced, it is carried on in his presence. Now, it's important that we understand that in the first commandment and verses 4 through 6, the second with the argument that the whole section deals with one thing. In other words, they're saying this deals with a whole different thing, but it actually deals with one thing. Are you following? Idolatry, whenever it is practiced, it is practiced in the presence and in the eyes of Abba Yahuwah. And this is why we should never practice anything that goes against him, because his eyes are not closed. He never closes his eyes to where he can't see anything. Thou shalt not make, even if not intended for idolatry, it's not to be made. A graven image, anything chiseled out in the earth beneath, that is beneath the Shemayim. Now, someone asked, well, what about, like dolphins and, birds and what was it? It was something else. And of those different things. And even people don't, deal with dogs because they are a image of people. I like stuffed animals, and it's not chiseled out, but it was created. And so when you look at the things where like dolphins and you look at other things that are made from wood and their figurines, most of the time when you look at those things, and if you look on the bottom, it will have an inscription on the bottom. And it will allude to what it is for. Either it is for worship or it is for something else, which still is along the lines of worship. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. All right. The water under the earth. Sea and land form one globe or one, the corners of the earth. This includes the bed of the ocean and that what dwells there. That what dwells there. Shall not bow down unto them. That is to the objects to be found in the Shemayim above and the earth beneath. That means we are not to bow down to anything. And when you start talking about the Shemayim, you start looking at the Malak, and you start looking at the solar system, and you start looking at what is it called? The what is considered the zodiac, which we know its beginning was in the Mazareth. And so we are the constellations. You're not supposed to worship the constellations either. Any of those things. Um, Nor serve them by sacrificing or offering incense to them. A jealous power. Jealous is exacting punishment and in refusing to surrender my rights by condoning idolatry. I resent that one who worships me should have another object of worship. So once again, we're not supposed to do that, and I know a lot of time people will refute this because they say, well, our ancestors made these things. Case in point, they made it. Are you hearing me? They made these things. And why did they make them? Did they make them for the sole purpose of idol worship? 9 times out of 10, they did. It's sad, but 9 times out of 10, they did. Visiting, that is remembering the sin of the fathers, that they should be added to the punishment of their wicked children. Now, this is why this was added, because you can't punish somebody that's innocent, but we come to understand that as the father, so the children. In other words, the same thing with the mother. If they are wicked, then what's going to happen? They're going to pass that same wickedness down to the children. And this is why we stood in positions of judgment, because what was passed down to us was wickedness. To refute, to talk against, to speak ill, and to speak evil against the instructions of the Abba. So this is why it was passed down, not because we were doing right, but because we adopted bad habits and bad ways. So this is why he says he will remember them. But the way we remove that is we start following in truth, and we repent and turn from that way of life and begin to walk in truth. Visiting in the sense, according to another theologian, of punishing, the effects of the penalty imposed upon a sinner are felt up to including the fourth generation. Now, this is one person that is saying the reason why it will be felt by the children is because the punishment or the loss of an individual will be felt. I would believe to lean more towards the first interpretation because the reason he will remember it upon the children is because, once again, children learn at home before they learn anywhere else. So these will be habits that will be picked up and things that will be taught. Somebody will say, but if they weren't teaching them these things, how would they know? That's the problem. Because if you're not teaching them to do right, then they're going to learn to do wrong. Because there's no in between. Well, we didn't know, so we couldn't teach them what we didn't know. Exactly. So it's passed down to who? Passed down to us. And it is for us to correct and make the changes. Are you following?
Yes.
On the father children as when they retain the evil deeds of their fathers. Not that Yahuwah visits the sins of the fathers upon their children, but he takes the sins of the former into account when punishing the children for the veil or the evil they have done in following the bad example of their parents. Just as I said, they followed the example. If you follow the example, I mean, it's sad, but it is the truth. Most of the time, when you find, unless it is an exceptional person and they say, this is not the way I want to live, and in them was interjected a better way of life, and they said, you know what, I'm not going to live like that. You had that uncle, that cousin, that auntie, that friend, that sister, somebody that was out that said, you ain't got to follow the steps of them. You don't have to live that way of life. Are you following me? And they decide to break away because they've heard truth and say, I'm going to change my ways. Then this is how you find that is broken, that right there is changed. And it is so. The third and fourth generation, the sins become cumulative only if the next generation is more wicked than the previous. And you know, there's a saying, what one practices in moderation, the next it's an excessive. It just they go overboard, and we know it's the truth. We know it's the truth. Um, of them that hate me. If the children hate me, why would the children hate him? Because the parents hate him. You start thinking, what is hate? To dislike. You know, this when you say, I can't stand that, I dislike that, that's another form of hate. And when people come to me, I can't stand that because that's the law, and you know, and that teaches that, you're saying you hate that. And this is another reference that makes reference to that because we are taught what we don't understand to hate it. And what we hate, we try to do what? Destroy it. So it's important that we understand that what is being brought forth. Um, unto the thousandth generation, literally thousands, which implies at least 2,000. Consequently, the measure of Yahuwah's reward extends his in time 500 times longer than he measures of punishment. The cause of Yahuwah's special mercy to an individual may be due to the merit of a pious ancestor. It is an idiomatic phrase for all time. So once again, very important that we understand that if it is called chosen because of that, it is because that individual has taken up the characteristics of that ancestor. Are you following me? To where you say, I'm gonna break away from this way of life and I want to follow truth. If don't nobody tell me, I'm gonna find out, but I know the way I'm living is not right. And you've made up your mind like an ancestor did and said, I'm gonna follow this and I'm gonna do this. And you know, because many times I believe some of them walked in truth and desired for it to be passed down. But if you got more people fighting against it, they're not going to hold fast to that. They're going to continue walking the ways they walked in and continue to promote what? That way of life. And it is so. It is so. Of them that ahab me, that is the pious, they who prove their ahab by laying down their lives for the sanctification of my name. Others explain the phrase as referring to those who serve you who are from disinterested ahab and not for the sake of reward. I can say we do what we do because we have because we ahab him and because it's about relationship. It should always be about relationship, so that no matter what happens in our lives, we will still maintain, you know, that grip. I'm not gonna let you go because I know you won't let me go. And if I let go, you still won't let me go because I ahab you. Are you following me?
Yes.
That's important to understand. Why? because there are times that we will be challenged in our lives, and there will be times that we will go through things that can hurt us to the core of our hearts. And there are times that Abba Yahuwah knows that we might let go, but it's not because we don't believe in him. It's because we're trying to figure out what do we need to do. And that letting go is not letting go of his principles and his instructions for our lives, but it's that we're trying to grasp and hold on because of the situation. He's not going to let us go. He's going to hold on to us because he knows that we don't want to turn back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that you deal with things and issues that can hurt you. And you know, when you hold on to something, you get a wound. You doing something. The first thing you do is let go of what you hold on to do what? To secure that wound. And most time we grabbing this, oh man, that hurt me so bad. And you trying to, pat your own self up, and you forget that letting go of him, you letting go of the greatest medicine and the greatest healing that you could ever receive. But that's why he holds on to us, so that when we are strengthened, we be like, I didn't mean to let you go. But just at that time, this thing kind of rattled me, kind of, caught me at a time where it really got under my skin. Are you following me?
Yes.
All right. So it's very important that we understand that. Keep my commandments. That is the righteous. Take the name of Yahuwah in vain, taking an oath for no valid reason, to affirm something that is evident, to utter Yahuwah's name to no purpose when taking a false oath. The purpose is to safeguard the esteem of Abba Yahuwah. And once again, to make it of none importance. And this is why, uh, even though I don't regard the other sayings, I do regard Yahuwah, but I will still never be disrespectful. Are y'all following what I'm about to say? The name that others use. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Why? Because that is when we do things of that nature, I believe that's a lack of maturity. You know he's giving you the right name, then you walk in that and you continue to promote that name. And eventually that which is wrong will be corrected by how we continue to promote his name. But to get up there and say that ain't the right name and this is that and the other, that's all unnecessary. Because truly, who are you talking about? Are you following me? Yes. So we have to be careful, even in the in how we say certain things, but we are never to take his name and empty it, make it empty. We're never to take his name and make it lose its value. Are you following me? Yes. Very important that we understand that. Thy power explains the change from the first person as without significance, since it is a common idiom in Ibram. He quotes, that is, the fat of my feast, bring into the house of Yahuwah thy power. It is remarked also that whereas the Yasharites fully understood the meaning of the first two commandments, they could not grasp the implications of the following. And Moshe was compelled to make the intention perfectly clear. Hence his word or his use of Yahuwah thy power. Taketh his name in vain. The second in vain means when it is unnecessary. Remember, the verb is infinitive, and so is not limited in time. Always keep the Sabbath in mind during the week, so that if you come across a special article of food, set it aside for the esteeming of the Sabbath. The verb generally denotes the remembrance of a past event. Here it refers to the first Sabbath of creation. As Yahuwah completed his work and then hallowed the Sabbath Yom, so were the Yasharites to do week by week. In the parallel version, Devarim 5 and 12, it observes and it is substituted for remember. The rabbis declare that the two words were spoken simultaneously. Considers this attempt to harmonization contrary to reason, and maintains that in Devarim or Deuteronomy, Moshe provided an of the wording as it emanated from Yahuwah. Remember signifies bear in mind, which is the seventh Yom. And Moshe explained that you should keep it Kadesh. Similarly, he urges, as Yahuwah, thy power commanded thee, and so deemed it unnecessary to explain the reason for in 6 Yamim, etc., inasmuch as Yahuwah gave no reason why the manservant and maidservant were also to abstain from work. Moshe added it when repeating the commandment To keep it Kadesh, a person should so order his affairs during the week that his mind is completely free of them on the Sabbath. And this is why it is important that we regard it and understand its ramifications and understand the significance and understand what it entails so that we ain't out buying and doing everything else and counting down when, in about an hour or two, this will be up and I'll be able to get out and do what I need to do. That's not what we do. It's a time of resting. It's a time of going over his instructions because all we're doing is sitting and listening and reading, keeping our minds focused on his instructions for our lives. And it is so.
And it is so.
6 young men shalt thou labor in all transitory things that may be essential for your welfare. Labor is a general term for work in the field. So anything that you remember, anything that's laborious, any type of work, we do not do. Work, inclusive of anything done for one's physical well-being and personal benefit, to supply one's essential needs. With the advent of the Sabbath, a man should consider that all his labors have been completed and give no thought to work. That is why it's important that we don't think about work, and this is why it's important that we try not to talk about work. Are you following me?
Yes.
Why? Because that's still, you're exerting energy, and then he says, "Look, I want your mind free of those things, so that we can continue to move forward." And it is so.
And it is so.
A Sabbath unto Yahuwah, a yom to be devoted to Kadesh service and the study of sacred books and spent in an atmosphere of the joy of the Ruach. Thou, this includes all adults, thy son, daughter, that is, minors who have not reached their maturity, maturity. Parents must take care to see that they do not violate the Sabbath. Exactly. Because we are the ones that's in charge of those that are underage. Are you following me?
Yes.
Thy stranger, that is the non-Yashraelite, who has undertaken to observe the seventh Noahide precepts. Although the Sabbath does not form one of the seven, the stranger is forbidden to do work on the Sabbath for an Yashraelite, but may do so for himself. Some explain stranger to mean a proselyte who has embraced the way of Yahshua. He becomes subject to the laws of the Sabbath observance. Once again, to know and understand, a proselyte is one who changes over and becomes a Yahshuaite. Are y'all following? And so these are ones that, whatever the case may be, if you're coming into truth and you accept this way of life, then it is given to you to walk in the commandments and walk in the 10 commandments, observe and be obedient to the Sabbath rest. And it is so. And it is so. All right. For in 6 Yamim, man should therefore, in respect of his work, imitate his creator. The Sabbath is a testimony to creation and its desecration, a denial of creation. So when we don't do it, we don't want to find ourselves desecrating, being disrespectful, and then above all being disobedient. Are you following? And it is so. All right. Baruch the Sabbath Yom. By endowing the Yashraelites on that Yom with an extra and hallowed it as a Yom to be devoted exclusively to Abba Yahuwah. Yahuwah declared it Baruch and hallowed above the other Yamim of the week. Yahuwah Baruched it with the double portion of manna and hallowed it by withholding its descent on the Sabbath. So once again, this is why we do everything we're supposed to do on the day of the Yom of preparation, which is the sixth Yom, which we would look at as being what would be Friday, which would be Friday. All right. Now, esteemed by Abba and by his fellow creatures. The latter begins with the esteem of parents as they are who is co-partners in creation. No details are given because it implies that they are to be esteemed as Yahuwah is to be esteemed in accordance with the preceding commandments. Because we are your first teachers. This is why, because we are supposed, because remember he said In Leviticus chapter 6, he said we're to do what? We are to teach these to our what? Our children. So they were supposed to teach them to the children as well, that thy young men may be known. This sentence is concisely worded. Its full implication is, if you will esteem your Abba and Ema, your young men will be prolonged, but if not, your young men will be shortened. Upon the land, Yahshua will not be driven from it into exile. The individual will live to old age in this world, and his young men will also be known in the world to come. Thou shalt not murder, either by physical violence or by the poisoning of the tongue. That is talebearing and false testimony. The murderer sins against Yahuwah inasmuch as he destroys his handiwork, because you assassinate the character of an individual with the tongue. Thou shalt not commit adultery. In law, this applies only to intercourse with a married woman. It forbids all illicit relationships between the sexes. The adulterer robs parenthood of its beauty, as by his sin he denies a child the knowledge of his Abba identity and prevents him from paying him filial esteem. Once again, very important that we understand when it says with a married woman, understand you cannot commit adultery, neither can you commit fornication. But this is specifically dealing with adultery. Married men can commit adultery. It's not just for women. Men that are married can commit adultery. Now I know people got this mentality. Well, polygamy. Out of all the things in the Bible, out of everything that we have in the scrolls, polygamy is one of the least things that ever Abba Yahuwah even dealt with. And when he dealt with it, he always dealt with it in a manner that he was using it as an analogy towards Yahshua. But he never dealt with it and told anybody. And the only person he ever alluded to was Dawood. You are not Dawood. And everybody want to sit up with 2 and 3 issues, thinking that they are somebody important and thinking that they are some ruler. You start thinking, it's amazing how people will focus on that more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And you see them taking pictures, in their so-called garb, looking like something, and they want to act like, well, man, you got it going on because you have 2 women. You look like a pimp. Right. It's the truth. Because you are sporting women around as though you have the right. What nations have you conquered? What kingdoms have you brought in? What have you done to set yourself up to make it like you are that important to where you can sit up there and say that you are somebody important like that? Are you hearing me? Yes. Nothing. But just to say you have 2 women or 3 or 4, y'all, come on. It's time that we mature and truly be about the Abba's business. He does not, when he comes in, if he was going to allude to polygamy, do you not know he would have put it in the commandments too? Mm-hmm. He was giving them the order on how they were to govern their lives, or how we are to govern our lives. Mm-hmm. That's right. And when people do that, it's almost like, well, the woman has no say. We get put away, and the man can go and marry 5 or 6 women, and the woman is the one to be put away and can never marry nobody else. Please tell me how unequal that is and how unfair that is. The woman can be put away and she can never marry, because if her husband can be malicious and put her away, then now she has to be without. But he could be the cruelest and the meanest thing in the world and say, well, you know what? If I can't have you and you ain't gonna hop me, then guess what? I'm gonna put you away and nobody will want you. Now you see how diabolical and how mean that is and how treacherous that can be. Yes. But then he can be mean and be a beater, and he can be mean and malicious with his tongues, and even he can be one of those that's not sentimental, that's not compassionate. But he can go on with his life. Y'all, come on, let's get it right and let's look at the characteristic here. You ain't gonna make me believe that's the character of Abba Yahuwah. So it's important that we understand these things. And then people try to allude to Yehukin, and I believe it is in chapter 20 where Yehu spoke to the woman. Chapter 5, 5, where he spoke to the woman at the well. And he told her when he said, go bring your husband. And she said, I haven't. He said, you're right. He said, because the one you're with is not yours. Now we will take that and use that one verse that was spoken to that one woman to declare that women, are not supposed to be happy. That's a lie. We don't know why she was with who she was with. We don't know why she ended up being with 4 or 5 men and ended up leaving each one of them. But we do know this: he told her that the one he ain't yours either. But we don't know what happened to her life after she left from dealing with after Yahush ministered to her. We don't know what else happened. But people would take 1 or 2 verses and run with them and build, taking straw and building kingdoms or building castles with it. We need to mature and see that there are more things that are important than that. You have women out here, men out here that won't desire relationships. And most of the time, you see that people just trying to get in the limelight. Because I don't care what you say. You're going to tell me you ready to share a man with another woman. Don't no man want to share his woman. And we are created equal. But it's all right for a man to say that he can have 4 or 5 wives, and a woman is supposed to submit to that. Now, understand, if we're in the image of Abba Yahuwah, and Abba Yahuwah does not want us worshiping and serving other powers, then how do you think that goes with that? He's a jealous power. We need to cut that out. Are you following me?
Yes.
We really need to cut that out. And no, I don't. I despise polygamy.
Yes.
I do. And the reason I despise it is because there have been so many women that got into this walk and with their husbands, and their husbands already was already out there doing stuff. Now they use the writings as a means to fulfill or to satisfy that lust. It's something they had always wanted to do. Now they found a platform to do it. And now the woman who said, this is something that I don't want, so I'm supposed to be unhappy because you want to be happy. So what am I supposed to do? I'm just supposed to accept it. Well, you can't leave. Oh, really? But he can bring another woman, and then they use that. Well, as long as you're taking care of them in different places. Now you in 4 and 5 different places. How can that be a home that's truly satisfied? It can't. You have to understand the needs of a woman are not weekly. They're daily. Are you following me?
Yes.
I'm going to have you 1 month, and then the next person's going to have you the next month. You have to understand, I don't care what people say and how you do it. You have to really condition yourself to really get in a mindset that you're going to go sleep with this woman and be with this woman for a month, and then you're going to go and give the other wife the same equal treatment. You are lying. The truth ain't in you. But see, you can't, and the thing of it is, what makes it really bad is that you cannot share with anybody else what's going on. So who's to judge who's being treated fair? Unless that woman speaks out and says, this is not fair. And 9 times out of 10, she is not. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. As if we don't have enough of men and women in the world to where they can have their own.
Right.
If he's jealous and possessive, and we have the same characteristics, then how is it that you can be that way, but she can't be that way? Something wrong with that picture. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's wrong, and I will never endorse it. Never. Say what you will, you say, well, you're just teaching out of your emotions. You're just teaching out of your flesh. No, you're responding and reacting out of your lustful flesh.
Yes.
That's what you're doing. Because what you are saying that there is nobody else qualified to be able to meet the needs of that woman but you. So you got to have 2 of them. While another brother could have that same woman in his life, and she could bring him, watch this, 100% of what the gift she has. You can't deal with but one of them at a time. Unless you're having orgies. That's exactly what I said. You got to deal with them one at a time. So somehow, some way, you cannot give them both 100% of your time. You gotta divide it up. 50 here, 50 there. Well, I give her 100%. No, you don't, because by the time you finish with that one, you are not at 100% of operation. Like I say, so we have to be careful with these things. and learn. Look at the heart of Abba Yahuwah.
Mhm.
Let's look at his heart. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's important. Thou shalt not steal, since the crimes of murder and adultery are punishable with death by a court. So an act of stealing must have been intended, which involves a likely penalty. Kidnapping, whereas ye shall not steal, refers to property. It also includes stealing the heart. That is deceit. It is a prohibition of every form of stealing, and that makes sense because now you've hurt somebody, and sometimes people don't ever get over that kind of hurt. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Literally, answer false witness. That is, do not answer if thou art a false witness. Included in the prohibition is talebearing as well as slander. You answering, and you know you don't know nothing about what's going on with the situation, but you get up there just because everybody else doing it, and you just chime in. Don't do that. Thou shalt not covet. Since the prohibition is repeated, some have imagined that the first clause is the ninth commandment and the second clause the 10th, but it is not so. The first use of covet relates to action by robbery. The second to a feeling in the heart. Consequently, in Leviticus 6 and 18, Moshe substituted a different verb for the former. No wise man covets because he knows that all he possesses is allotted to him by Yahuwah. All that people perceive, against the view of other commentators, is of opinion that the episode described in these verses took place before the revelation. The people overawed by the